Patch. Give it up for Dawn Marie Kelly, everyone.
The Wild Patch. Gerald can't stand cold toast, you know. He's very particular. That's to be expected of a man in his position, or, well, who used to be in that position, until he took early retirement. Oh, I must finish cleaning these jam pots. It takes a lot of concentration, more than you'd think. Gerald once explained to me that creating order in your surroundings leads to order in your life. When I lay the table, I line up the cutlery along the vertical lines on the check tablecloth and then arrange the teacups and side plates along the horizontal lines. Order, you see, is essential for a peaceful life. He wasn't always so particular, not when we were younger and moved about a lot. The army does that to a man, moves them about until one day they don't really belong to the wives or the mothers. They belong to the army, body and soul. Marion, where's that fresh bloody toast? Come in, dear. When we first met, he used to bring me flowers, said I was a peach. Imagine. But that was before he developed all these fixed ideas about routine. Clear this lot away, there's a good girl. I want to do my crossword. I must say he's very good at his crosswords, the cryptic ones too. I do wish he'd stick to his own things, though, and leave the home and the garden to me. I can't abide all this interfering. Take the garden. It used to be my pride and joy, but there's no arguing with him. Before he'd been home a month, out went my fuchsias and rhododendrons, and then he tore down my little feature bridge, an almost perfect copy of the one that led to a rainbow in Alice's picture book. His regiment sent flowers in the shape of her favourite teddy bear. Gerald said he couldn't stand the sight of flowers after that. Now I'm hemmed in by Cumberland stone and dwarf firs that line the paths like sentinels. Of course, once it was done, he lost interest. Low maintenance, he said, and then left me to water it. I must put the oven on to warm up, to sterilise these pots. As soon as Gerald's off out, I fetch a big steaming pot of Earl Grey tea and my secret stash of chocolate fingers, and I curl up on the couch with one of my latest books. I like the ones with beautiful pictures of flowers, but it does get depressing when you know you can't grow any of them. I've switched to more technical ones lately. The Healing Garden, medicinal and toxic shrubs and plants. My librarian even asked me if I was going in for a qualification. It's just to pass the time, really. Although I do have a little secret. From Gerald, that is. It's laughable to say it's a secret. It's staring him in the face every day. But then, as my old mum used to say, we only tend to see what we're looking for, don't we? At the bottom of our garden, there's a steep embankment leading up to the railway tracks. The line's disused now, so there's no noise. Anyway, back when my garden was still my own to do with as I pleased, I started scattering seeds up there. I'd been reading up on wild varieties of plants and how they fit into the scheme of things. If you want butterflies and bees for cross-pollination, or ladybirds to keep your aphids down, a wild patch is just the thing. When Gerald ripped out all of my old favourites, my heart was in my mouth, in case he carried on up the embankment. Thankfully, his regimental turn of mind meant that as soon as he got to the bottom of the garden, as far as he was concerned, his territory ended. He didn't give that wild patch a look. Not that it would have meant anything to him, if he had. He'd probably have just seen it as a jumbled mess. But he'd have been wrong. Gerald's ulcers have been playing him up since he retired. The doctor says it's stress and that he ought to take things easier. But men like Gerald have to keep busy, or they'd feel useless, even if that means downing one too many brandies down at the club. I've tried to help, but there's no talking to him. Marion, I'm in agony. Fetch my pills, for Christ's sake. I offered to make him a nice cup of chamomile tea. It's supposed to be very soothing, but he just shouts, "Don't go foisting that natural rubbish on me. I want relief." So do I, from him. But I don't say anything. As my old mum used to say, an ounce of action is worth a pound of talking. If Gerald's gone for the day, I spend hours up on the embankment, and I've even managed a few wild crops, nothing extravagant, just a few berries and such like. Funny how some of those berries are gobbled up by the birds but would be poisonous to us. Of course, if Alice was still alive, I might have grandchildren by now, and I'd need to be more careful. As it is, I just wonder, how do the birds know what's safe? And more to the point, how did we find out? Trial and error, I suppose. Recently, I made some elderberry jam. The irony is, Gerald loves it, laps it up, but he doesn't know it's mine. He used to love my jam, but I stopped making it that year when Alice and I collected all those wild blueberries together. Gerald had been posted to Osnabrück, and we were allocated a nice little house with our own front garden. Alice sat out there eating most of the Big Burn while I prepared the pots and weighed the sugar. I watched her through the window. Her face and dress were covered in juice, but she looked a picture, all smiles and curls. Gerald was late getting back from convoy duty. He'd said he'd be home in time for tea, but he wasn't. Alice wouldn't come in. She said she wanted to wait for Daddy. When I went out to fetch her and the rest of the fruit, she was gone. I called and called for her, and then I called for Gerald, but he didn't come. Gerald can't get enough of this jam. I told him one of the neighbours dropped it in, but he still won't drink my chamomile tea, and when I offered him cranberry juice for the trouble with his waterworks, he threw it at me. This new batch is a bit on the tart side, but he's mad about it, puts great dollops on his toast every morning. Not that he's worried about his waistline, the amount of booze he can put away. The hospital did some tests and said the lining of his stomach and his gullet are covered in tiny varicose veins. There's every chance that they'll rupture one of these days. He really should be more careful. I'm so glad I've got my wild patch. I've collected cuttings from all over the place, especially the local woodland and meadows. There's bramble at the back, and then elderberry bushes, sloes and belladonna forming a deep, dark bower. On a hot day, it's a lovely, cool spot to sit. I get to thinking about sloe gin and elderberry wine and bramble jelly, thinking about my garden, thinking about Alice. We knew she was never going to be found alive. Gerald's ulcers have got much worse. The sweat's pouring off him this morning. I've offered to phone the doctor, but he called him a crack. At least his appetite's not too bad. He's eaten half a fresh bloomer, and the best part of a pot of my elderberry jam. I'm so glad he likes it. I like to see a man eat. Marion? Yes, dear. I feel awful. Can I get you something? I'm giddy, Marion. You look green. Where are you going? I'm right here, dear. Where else would I be? I can hardly breathe. The pain, my gut, my throat. I'll pour you another cuppa, dear. Calm your nerves. An ambulance, Marion. I need an ambulance. Help me. Don't be silly, Gerald. Have some more jam. He's heaving up, all over his shirt and down onto my nice clean tiles. Such a mess. Blood and jam spewing everywhere. What can I do? Now he's tumbled sideways, flipping all over the kitchen floor like a landed fish. I'd never have expected so much blood. Best not watch, really. I'll just wash out that jam pot and sterilise it properly. You mustn't leave a trace. As my old mum used to say, a good jam maker always takes care of her pots. Yes. As that's the last of this batch, I think I'll do that before I call emergency services. It will help to calm me down a bit, doing something practical. He's quiet. At last. There now, Gerald.